My daughter pointed at me and said, "Excuse me, kitchen workers should stay in the back." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear. Her eyes looked right through me like I was a ghost. All the fancy guests turned and stared at my simple yellow dress from the discount store. The daughter I raised alone for 28 years just pretended she never knew me. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from. Standing in that big fancy hotel, I felt my heart break into tiny pieces. Not because it hurt. I knew it would hurt. But because I finally understood she planned this whole thing. After 28 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees and helping with homework, you'd think a mother would get a hug at her daughter's wedding. But rich people have a special way of making you invisible even when you're standing right there. The woman next to my daughter, Robert's mother, Mrs. Elizabeth Montgomery, smiled in a mean way. "Oh, sweetie," she said to my daughter, "your catering people really need better training about which doors to use." I looked down at my yellow dress. It was the prettiest thing I owned. I bought it special for today. At 60 years old, I knew how to find good deals and make my money last. 2 months of working late nights at the grocery store paid for that dress, the present, and the gas to drive here from my small town. "I made a mistake," I said quietly, even though my insides felt like they were shaking. "I'll go around back." A security guard started walking toward me. He was a nice-looking man about my age. He probably had kids too. "Ma'am, if you could please." "It's okay," I stopped him. "I understand. No big scene. Not here. Not in front of these people who already thought I was nobody." I started to leave, but then I saw my daughter's face. Just for one tiny second, something changed in her eyes. She knew exactly who I was. She knew, and she chose to lie about it. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was her plan all along. The story of how my daughter became a stranger starts 20 months ago. That's when she brought Robert Montgomery home to meet me. I should have seen the warning signs right then. But mothers always want to believe the best about their children. "Mom, this is Robert," my daughter Sarah said. Her voice sounded different, colder, like she was reading from a script. Robert had perfect hair and perfect teeth and a handshake that felt like touching ice. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "Sarah has mentioned you." What he really meant was Sarah told him I was going to be a problem. I spent all day cooking for that dinner. I made fried chicken, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, and apple pie. The same meal Sarah begged for every birthday when she was little. The same meal she said was her favorite food in the whole world. Robert picked at his food like it might make him sick. "This is very home-style," he said. That word, home-style. Like my cooking was something strange from a museum. Sarah barely ate anything either. She kept watching Robert look at everything in my house. The old couch I'd had since she was born. The plastic tablecloth. The family photos on the wall from our trips to the lake. "Mom still has that picture from my 10th birthday," Sarah said with a weird laugh. "How cute," Mrs. Montgomery said when she visited the next month. She said it the same way you'd say, "How sad." That was when everything started changing, though I didn't understand it then. I thought I was watching my daughter fall in love. What I was really watching was my daughter walk away from me one step at a time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the real moment when I should have known I was losing her. The phone call came on a Wednesday night in April. I was sitting at my kitchen table paying bills. The same table where Sarah did her homework every night for 12 years. When her name showed up on my phone, I smiled. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. Not "Hi Mom" or "How are you?" Just that flat business voice she'd been using more and more since Robert came into her life. "Of course, honey. What's going on?" I heard other voices in the background. Fancy voices talking about expensive wine and vacation homes. She was at the Montgomery house again. "It's about the wedding. We've been looking at the guest list, and we need to make some changes." Changes? I put down my pen and listened carefully. "What kind of changes?" "Nothing big," she said fast. "It's just that Robert's family wants the wedding to be very formal. Very proper. Like the weddings they always have." Waited. 40 years of raising a kid by yourself teaches you when to talk and when to stay quiet and let them fill the silence. The thing is, Mom, your friends from work and the neighborhood might feel uncomfortable. It can be really fancy. Different from what they know. There it was. The knife sliding in smooth and quiet. I see, I said. What about your Aunt Linda? Your cousin Jenny who helped us move you to college? This isn't personal, Mom. We just want everyone to feel good. Comfortable. Like my family and friends were embarrassing secrets that needed to stay hidden. How many people from my side are we cutting, Sarah? Long silence. Really long. Well, we saved 5 seats for your side. You, Aunt Linda, maybe Mrs. Chen from next door since she helped raise you, and 2 others you can pick. 5 seats for the woman who raised her alone after her daddy died when she was 9. 5 seats for the family who loved her no matter what for 28 years. Okay, I said, even though nothing felt okay. You sound upset. I'm just surprised. That night I sat looking at old photo books. Every birthday party I threw with balloons from the dollar store and cake I made myself. Every school play where I sat alone while other parents sat in couples. Every sacrifice I made so she could have a good life. But none of that was good enough for the Montgomerys. Meeting the Montgomery family in their real home was like visiting another planet. Their house in the rich part of town had more rooms than my whole neighborhood had houses. Mrs. Elizabeth Montgomery met me at the door wearing pearls as big as marbles and a smile that never touched her eyes. Helen, how wonderful to finally meet you properly, she said. She said my name like it tasted bad. Please, everyone calls me Helen, I said. Oh, I prefer proper names, she replied. Names tell so much about a person's background. Robert's father, Mr. Charles Montgomery, Jr., barely looked up from his newspaper when we were introduced. The man knew how to make you feel like you didn't exist even when you were standing right in front of him. Sarah tells us you work at a grocery store, Mrs. Montgomery said as she walked me through rooms that looked like nobody actually lived in them. How practical. When she said practical, it sounded like a disease. I'm the store manager, I explained. I help people find what they need and keep everything running smooth. How nice, she whispered, walking past paintings that probably cost more than I made in a year. The real trouble started at dinner. They sat me between Robert's great-aunt Susan, who was 92 and couldn't hear much, and his cousin Danny, who was 37 and drank too much wine. So, Helen, Mr. Montgomery said while we ate soup. Sarah mentioned you raised her by yourself. That must have been quite hard. The word hard hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to talk about. We had tough times, I said. But we did just fine together. Oh, I'm sure you tried your best, Mrs. Montgomery added with that smile again. Single parents are everywhere these days. Though children really do better with proper support. Danny laughed into his wine glass. Mother means money, Helen. Kids do better with money. Even Sarah looked embarrassed then, but she didn't say anything. That silence was louder than any words. Luckily, Mr. Montgomery continued, Robert can provide the stability that's been missing. That's when I understood. This wasn't about money or being rich. This was about erasing me completely. Replacing my 28 years of love with their version of what a proper family should be. But they had more surprises coming. The wedding day came with dark clouds and rain, which felt right for what would become the worst day of my life. I woke up at 4 in the morning with a stomachache that had nothing to do with food. My yellow dress hung on my closet door like a flag of defeat. 2 months of extra work for a dress that cost less than Mrs. Montgomery probably spent on lunch. But it was clean and pressed and nice. It was the best I could do. The Riverside Hotel was everything I expected. Big marble floors and fancy lights and workers who could spot people who didn't belong from far away. I parked my old car between two shiny expensive cars, feeling like I was ruining the parking lot. Inside, the lobby buzzed with people getting ready for the wedding. Women in dresses that cost more than my monthly rent kissed the air near each other's faces. Men in expensive suits talked about golf and business. I stood near the gift table holding my present, a handmade quilt I'd sewn myself over 6 months. Every stitch held a memory. Every square told a story from Sarah's childhood. I'd used fabric from her baby blankets, her favorite dress from 3rd grade, my old apron she used to wear when we baked cookies. "Oh my!" I heard Mrs. Montgomery's voice before I saw her. She was talking to a group of women, her voice carrying just far enough for me to hear. "Such an interesting guest list today. Sarah has such a kind heart, including everyone." When she said everyone, it was clear she meant me. I pretended to look at the gift table, reading tags on fancy wrapped boxes from expensive stores. My homemade quilt looked small and simple next to them. But it was made with love, which had to matter. That's when Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs in her wedding dress. She looked like a princess from a storybook. Beautiful, glowing, my baby girl all grown up. For one moment my heart filled with joy and pride. This was my daughter, the little baby I rocked to sleep every night. The teenager I helped through her first heartbreak. The young woman I cheered for at college graduation. Then she saw me, and I watched my daughter's face go completely blank. Like someone just erased every memory of the woman who raised her. Like I was a stranger she'd never met before in her whole life. The change was small but complete. Sarah's whole body changed. Her chin went up. Her eyes slid past me like I was part of the wall. She'd been practicing this, I realized. This wasn't something she just decided to do. This was planned. "Sarah, darling." Mrs. Montgomery appeared next to her. "You look absolutely perfect. Everyone is so excited." They moved through the crowd like royalty, smiling and accepting congratulations. I stayed by the gift table, still holding my present, watching my daughter charm people who wouldn't give me the time of day. "Ma'am," a young worker came up to me. "The wedding is starting soon. Can I show you to your seat?" "Yes, please," I said. She led me through the crowd, past groups of Montgomery family and friends, toward the back of the room. My seat was in the very last row, behind a big plant that blocked most of the view. Row after row of Montgomerys and their rich friends filled the front. 5 chairs in the back corner held everyone from my side of the family. Me, my sister Linda who drove from 2 states away, and Mrs. Chen, my old neighbor who helped me raise Sarah. "Well," Linda whispered as she sat next to me. "This is cozy. Leave it to my sister to find humor when things were terrible." She looked around with the sharp eyes of a woman who'd spent 35 years teaching school. "Did you see the gift table?" she asked quietly. "There's a present there from the state senator." "Really? Really?" "Also one from some famous businessman I saw on TV." The music started and everyone stood up. Bridesmaids in matching purple dresses walked down slowly, followed by a flower girl. Robert's niece, a tiny girl with blonde curls who threw rose petals everywhere. Then came Sarah. But she wasn't walking alone. And she wasn't being walked by her late father's brother like we'd talked about years ago. No, Mr. Charles Montgomery Jr. was walking her down the aisle. She'd chosen her new father-in-law over the memory of her real father. Over the mother who raised her alone. As she passed our row, I caught her eye for just 1 second. Something flickered there. Recognition, maybe. Or regret. But it vanished so fast I might have imagined it. The ceremony was beautiful and cold. Full of words about tradition and family history. When the preacher asked if anyone objected, people laughed nervously. I stayed quiet, of course. But in that moment I wondered what would happen if I stood up and said, "I object to my daughter pretending I don't exist." Instead, I watched her promise to love and honor a man whose family had spent the last year slowly erasing me from her life. And then they were married. Time for the party. That's when the real hurt began. The cocktail hour was where the Montgomery family really showed their claws. I'd barely walked into the party room when a woman in a sparkly dress and enough diamonds to blind someone came up to me with a cold smile. "You must be Helen," she said, though we'd never met. "I'm Victoria, Elizabeth's sister. I understand you're working the event today." Working the event. Not the mother of the bride. Not even a guest. She thought I was one of the workers. "Actually, I'm—" "Oh, wonderful," she interrupted, pushing an empty glass into my hands. "Could you get me another drink? The expensive champagne, not the regular kind. I can tell the difference." I stood there holding her glass like a fool while she walked away to talk to her rich friends. Around me, the party buzzed with laughter and talking. Fancy glasses clinked. Expensive shoes clicked on the marble floor. Nobody noticed that the mother of the bride was being treated like the help. Well, almost nobody. "Ma'am." A real worker came up to me. She was a college girl with kind eyes and the tired look of someone working 3 jobs to pay for school. "Are you okay? You look lost." "Just finding my way," I said, putting the champagne glass on a nearby table decorated with white flowers that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. The worker looked around nervously, making sure her boss wasn't watching. "I don't mean to be rude, but my boss said there might be some confusion about staff today. Are you supposed to be working?" Even the real workers could tell I didn't belong with the guests. That's when I understood the full truth of my daughter's betrayal. She hadn't just cut my friends and family from her wedding. She'd set things up so I'd be mistaken for hired help. The woman I raised alone, put through college while working 2 jobs, loved without conditions for 28 years, had planned my public shame down to every tiny detail. "No, sweetie," I said gently, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not working. I'm the bride's mother." The girl's eyes went huge with shock. "Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Had no idea. Mrs. Montgomery told us all the family was at the main table. So when I saw you back here..." She stopped talking, realizing she was making it worse. Mrs. Montgomery. My daughter was already Mrs. Montgomery, and she'd made sure everyone knew the only family worth knowing was sitting at the front in their designer clothes and custom suits. "It's not your fault," I told the worker. "Seems like lots of people are confused today." That was putting it nicely. What happened today wasn't confusion. It was character murder. That's when I saw Sarah across the room, laughing at something Robert whispered in her ear. She looked radiant, happy, completely unbothered by the fact that she'd just erased the woman who gave her life. Her dress probably cost more than I made in 4 months, and she wore it like armor against her past. But I'd been wrong about my daughter. As I watched her move through that crowd of sharks in fancy clothes, I realized she'd been planning this shame for months. every cut friend, every reduced guest list, every calculated insult. It had all been building to this moment where I would stand in a corner, invisible and unimportant, while she started her new life as someone who never had a mother at all. The worst part. She was good at it. My little girl who used to cry when she stepped on bugs had become someone who could destroy a person's dignity without even blinking. But she forgot one important thing about the woman who raised her. I didn't give up easy. And I'd been dealing with people who thought they were smarter than me for 35 years. Dinner was announced like it was a royal parade. The main table sparkled with gold-edged plates and crystal that probably cost more than my car. Sarah sat there like a queen, accepting congratulations from a parade of people who treated her like she just cured cancer instead of marrying into money. I found my assigned seat at a tiny table tucked behind a huge plant in the far corner. The spot was so far away it might as well have been in a different building. My table mates were an interesting mix of the forgotten and the dismissed. The flower lady, the photographer's helper, two old cousins who'd been deemed too embarrassing for good seats, and someone's date who got abandoned for better company. "Well, this is nice," Cousin Martha said, adjusting her hearing aid and squinting at the distance to the main table. "I haven't been stuck at the reject table since your Uncle Bob's third wedding. At least then we got bread." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was sitting with people who actually did real work for this wedding. Flowers that made the room beautiful. Photos that would capture memories. Decades of family history that apparently meant nothing to the bride. Meanwhile, the main table was full of people whose only contribution was money and the ability to look down on working people. Mr. Charles Montgomery Jr. stood to make the first toast, tapping his crystal glass with a silver knife that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. His voice carried easily across the room, trained by years of business meetings and country club speeches. "Today we celebrate not just a marriage, but the joining of two families with shared values and traditions. Robert and Sarah represent the best of what happens when people are raised with proper guidance and support." Shared values. I almost choked on my water. What values? The importance of money over love. The art of pretending people don't exist. The belief that love can be bought with the right wedding venue and enough champagne. Proper guidance. 28 years of single motherhood apparently didn't count as proper guidance. All those nights staying up helping with homework. All those school events I went to alone. All those sacrifices I made to give her chances I never had. None of that was guidance in Charles Montgomery's world. The speech went on with pretty words about tradition and legacy. Words that sounded nice but meant nothing when you stripped away the fancy packaging. I watched the guests nod and drink their expensive wine, probably calculating how much the flower arrangements cost. The photographer moved between tables, taking pictures of happy moments. When she got to my table, she stopped, looking at her notes with a confused face. "Excuse me, are you Helen Patterson?" "Yes, the bride's mother." She looked really puzzled, checking her notes again and then looking at the main table where the official family sat. "I was told by the wedding planner there would be no family photos from the bride's side. Just the Montgomery family portraits. No family photos. My daughter made sure her wedding album would have no proof that I ever existed. Future Montgomerys would look through beautiful pictures of this day and never know the bride had been raised by a woman who loved her enough to work 2 jobs and give up her own dreams so Sarah could have everything." "I understand," I said calmly, though inside I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. "Maybe you could take one quick picture of our table, though, for the record." The photographer smiled with sympathy and raised her camera. As the flash went off, I thought about all the photos that would be missing from this wedding. No mother-daughter getting ready shots. No tears while helping her into her dress. No traditional family pictures showing 3 generations. No mother-daughter dance where I would have told her how proud I was. Sarah had erased me so completely that future generations would never know she had a mother at all. In her version of history, she apparently appeared out of thin air, born from pure ambition. But here's what my daughter didn't know about me. 35 years of managing a grocery store teaches you how to notice things that don't add up. And something about this whole situation smelled like a cover-up that went way beyond social embarrassment. During the band's break, I excused myself to use the bathroom and took a little detour past the hotel's business office. Call it professional curiosity, or maybe just the instincts of a woman who'd spent decades balancing books and spotting shoplifters who thought they were clever. The door was slightly open, probably left that way during the chaos of running the event, and I could hear familiar voices inside having what sounded like a very private talk. It's absolutely critical that there's no visible connection to anyone looking from the outside, Mr. Montgomery was saying, his voice tight with worry. The tax investigation is still happening, and they're specifically looking at our business circle. My feet stopped moving. Tax investigation. I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. "Dad, you're worrying too much," I heard Robert reply, though his voice wasn't as confident as his words. "Nobody's going to trace anything back to the offshore accounts. The paperwork is clean. The wedding guest list alone would raise red flags if anyone looked too closely," Mr. Montgomery continued. "That's why we needed to keep certain people away from this event. People with the wrong kind of professional background." My blood went cold. This wasn't about social embarrassment or class. This was about something much bigger and much more dangerous. "What about Helen?" Mrs. Montgomery's voice was sharp with the kind of fear that comes from knowing you're in real trouble. "She could be a real problem if she starts noticing the right things. Her job makes her exactly the type of person we can't have looking around." "She won't be a problem." Sarah's voice made my heart completely stop. "Trust me, Mother. I know exactly how to handle her. She's so desperate for my love that she'll believe anything I tell her." "Mother." My daughter was calling Elizabeth Montgomery Mother, with the same warm tone she used to use for me. And she was talking about me like I was a stray dog that needed to be controlled. "Good," Mr. Montgomery continued, his voice carrying the cold calculation of a man used to making problems disappear. "The less she knows about Robert's business setup, the better for everyone. A store manager with her experience would spot financial problems immediately if she saw the right paperwork. That's when the pieces clicked into place like a lock opening to show something ugly inside. My job wasn't just embarrassing to them. It was genuinely dangerous. I'd spent 15 years managing inventory, tracking money, spotting theft patterns, building cases that sent shoplifters and embezzlers to jail. And apparently there were patterns here that the Montgomery family desperately didn't want noticed by someone with my particular skills. I slipped away from the door and went back to my table, my mind racing. What kind of tax investigation involved wedding guest lists? What business setup required offshore accounts? And why was my daughter so confident she could manipulate me into staying quiet about whatever illegal stuff her new family was doing? The band came back from break and announced the traditional father-daughter dance. Mr. Montgomery walked Sarah onto the floor while everyone watched, cameras flashing. She looked up at him with the same adoring look she used to give me back when I was the most important person in her world. As they danced to Butterfly Kisses, a song I used to sing to her when she was small and scared of thunderstorms, I realized this wedding wasn't just about joining two families. It was about burying evidence of anything that might mess up the Montgomerys' carefully built fake life of respectability, including me. But they made one big mistake. They assumed a working woman from a small town would be too scared of their wealth and power to fight back when she discovered their secrets. Clearly they'd never met a woman who raised a daughter alone while working full-time and going to night school, who built a career spotting criminals who thought they were too smart to get caught. Time to show them what proper guidance really looked like. The moment I'd been waiting for came during the cake cutting, while everyone watched Sarah and Robert cut into a giant 4-layer cake decorated with enough sugar flowers to fill a garden. I quietly walked up to the band leader during a short break. "Excuse me," I said politely, showing him my driver's license with the name Patterson clearly visible next to my photo. "I'm Helen Patterson, the bride's mother. I'd like to make a short announcement after the cake, if that's okay." He looked genuinely confused, probably because nobody mentioned during all the planning that the bride actually had a mother, but he nodded professionally. "Of course, ma'am. Just signal me when you're ready." I went back to my corner table and watched my daughter feed cake to her new husband while cameras flashed everywhere. She was glowing with happiness, completely unaware that her perfect day was about to get very complicated. The innocence in her smile made my heart hurt for just a moment. She looked so much like the little girl who used to help me bake cookies for school, carefully measuring flour and sneaking chocolate chips. But that little girl was gone, replaced by a woman who chose money over the mother who sacrificed everything for her. You see, while they'd been busy congratulating themselves on their masterful deception and celebrating their successful exclusion of anyone who might ask uncomfortable questions, I'd been busy doing what I do best: noticing things that don't add up and building a case. During my little trip to the bathroom and my detour past the business office, I'd done more than just listen to their incriminating talk. I'd also taken several clear photos with my phone. Photos of documents that had been carelessly left on Mr. Montgomery's desk. Tax forms from 3 different years, all showing numbers that didn't match. Property records for houses under Robert's name that didn't line up with his reported income. Bank statements showing wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Caribbean, always just before tax deadlines. There was the beach house purchase that happened 2 days after a mysterious $200,000 deposit appeared. The sports car that got bought right when his business claimed to be losing money. The investment property that magically showed up just before wedding planning started. Each transaction perfectly timed. Each amount just big enough to raise questions. 15 years of managing a store and tracking inventory teaches you to recognize patterns that innocent people would miss. And Robert Montgomery had a very interesting pattern of mysterious money that always appeared exactly when he needed it, without any clear source. The tax investigation Mr. Montgomery mentioned. I'd bet my savings it was related to those convenient deposits and the complex web of offshore accounts they'd mentioned. And I'd bet everything I owned that the Montgomerys' sudden urgency to keep me away from their family gatherings had everything to do with my professional skill at spotting financial fraud when I saw it. My daughter thought she was marrying into wealth and security, joining a family that would give her the sophisticated life she'd always wanted. What she'd actually done was become part of a federal crime, probably without even knowing it. But ignorance wouldn't protect her when the FBI finished their investigation. And it certainly wouldn't protect her from the consequences of humiliating the one person who might have been able to help her avoid the legal nightmare she just walked into. "Ladies and gentlemen," the band leader announced, tapping his microphone to get everyone's attention. "We have a special request for the microphone from a member of the wedding party." The room got quiet slowly as conversations stopped and faces turned toward the small stage where the band had been playing. I walked slowly toward the center of the dance floor, feeling hundreds of eyes watching me with curiosity and growing worry. Some guests were probably wondering who this woman in the discount dress was and why she was interrupting their elegant party. Sarah's face went completely white as she finally realized who was holding the microphone. She grabbed Robert's arm, her manicured nails digging into his expensive tuxedo. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate this beautiful wedding," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the speakers. "I'm Helen Pattison, and I'm Sarah's mother." A whisper ran through the crowd like a wave. Several Montgomerys exchanged shocked looks. They'd apparently done such a thorough job of erasing me that some guests were genuinely surprised to learn the bride had a mother at all. "I have something very important to share with everyone here tonight, especially my daughter and her new family." That's when I saw real fear flash across Mr. Montgomery. Mr. Montgomery lunged toward me then, his composure finally cracking completely, but he was too late. The FBI agents who'd been quietly entering through the side doors reached him first, their badges glinting under the chandeliers. "Charles Montgomery, you're under arrest for tax fraud, conspiracy and money laundering," the lead agent announced, her voice cutting through the chaos that had erupted. Guests screamed and scattered like startled birds. Cameras flashed from every direction as federal agents moved efficiently through the crowd, reading rights to half the main table while wealthy socialites tried to figure out how to distance themselves from people they'd been toasting just minutes earlier. Sarah stood frozen in the middle of it all, still in her designer dress, watching her new family being led away in handcuffs while her perfect day fell apart around her like a sandcastle hit by a wave. I walked over to where she stood and gently took her shaking hands in mine. "Honey," I said softly, my voice full of the love that 28 years couldn't erase. "When you're ready to come home to people who actually love you for who you are instead of what you can do for them, I'll be waiting." Then I picked up my purse, nodded to my sister Linda who was watching the chaos with barely hidden satisfaction, and walked out of that hotel with my head held high and my dignity intact. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be erased by people who think your love makes you weak. And sometimes it's making sure the truth comes out at exactly the moment when it will do the most damage to people who deserve everything they get. The next morning's headlines read, "Society Wedding Becomes FBI Operation. Prominent Family Arrested for $1 million Tax Fraud." But the best part came 4 days later. Soft knock on my door. When I opened it, there was Sarah, still wearing her going-away outfit from the wedding, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black rivers. "Mom," she whispered, her voice broken with real regret. "I'm so sorry for everything. Can I please come home?" I opened my arms and my daughter fell into them like she was 9 years old again, sobbing against my shoulder the way she used to when the world felt too big and scary. "Some bridges can be rebuilt if both people are willing to do the work," I said quietly, stroking her hair the way I did when she was little. "It just takes the right foundation. Honesty, forgiveness, and love that doesn't come with conditions attached." We stood there in my doorway for a long time, her expensive wedding clothes getting wrinkled against my simple house dress, while she cried out months of mistakes and manipulation and fear. "I was so stupid," she sobbed. "They made me think you weren't good enough, that I needed to be someone different, someone better. You were always good enough, baby," I whispered. "You just forgot who you really were." Over the next few weeks, the full story came out in newspapers and on TV. The Montgomery family had been running an elaborate tax fraud scheme for almost 15 years, hiding millions in offshore accounts while claiming business losses to avoid paying taxes. Robert had been using his father's connections to move money around, always staying one step ahead of investigators. Until he got engaged and decided to throw a lavish $300,000 wedding that required accessing those hidden accounts in ways that finally caught the FBI's attention. The wedding I'd been excluded from, the wedding where I'd been treated like hired help, had been funded entirely by stolen money. Every flower, every piece of cake, every glass of champagne had been paid for with fraud. Sarah sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she'd done homework as a child, and told me everything. How the Montgomerys had slowly convinced her that her background was something to be ashamed of. How they'd coached her on what to say, how to act, who to exclude from her life. How they'd made her believe that erasing me was the price of admission to their world. "They said you'd embarrass me," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. "They said my friends from college would judge me if they knew my mom worked at a grocery store. That Robert's business partners would question his judgment if they knew his wife came from." She trailed off, unable to finish. "Came from poverty," I supplied gently. "Came from a single-parent home. Came from a mother who worked for a living instead of inheriting money." She nodded miserably. They made it sound so reasonable. Like they were helping me. Protecting my future. "And what did Robert say about all this?" Yes. Sarah's face crumpled again. "He said he loved me. That he wanted to give me the life I deserved. That his family only wanted the best for us." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I didn't know about the money laundering, Mom. I swear I didn't know. Thought they were just rich. I thought that's how rich people lived." I believed her. My daughter was many things. Foolish, manipulated, ashamed of her roots, but she wasn't a criminal. She'd been a pawn in a much bigger game, used by people who saw her ambition and insecurity as tools to legitimize their illegal empire. "The FBI questioned me for 6 hours," she said quietly. "They wanted to know what I knew when I knew it, if I'd helped move any money." She twisted her hands together nervously. "My lawyer says I won't be charged with anything. They believe I didn't know." "But Robert..." She couldn't finish. Robert was facing 15 years in federal prison, along with his father. His mother had taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony. The beach house, the mansion, the cars. All of it was being seized by the government to pay back taxes and penalties. The Montgomery empire was crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. "I signed a prenup," Sarah said suddenly. "The Montgomerys insisted. Said it was just standard procedure for families like theirs." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out it was to protect their assets from being traced. I get nothing. The marriage will be annulled. I have no job because I quit to plan the wedding. No home because we were going to live in Robert's condo that's being seized. No money because I spent my savings on the wedding." She looked around my small kitchen with fresh eyes. "I have nothing, Mom. Nothing except a mother who loves you," I finished softly. "And a home you can always come back to." The tears came fresh then, and I held my daughter while she cried for the life she thought she wanted and the person she'd become in pursuit of it. Over the following months, Sarah slowly pieced her life back together. She got a job at a local nonprofit, working with kids from single-parent homes. She started therapy to understand how she'd been manipulated and why she'd been so willing to abandon the people who truly loved her. She moved back into her old bedroom, the one with the faded purple walls and posters from high school still hanging. Some nights I'd hear her crying quietly, grieving for the future she'd imagined with Robert, for the person she'd become, for the relationship with me she'd nearly destroyed. But slowly, day by day, my daughter came back to me. The real Sarah, not the society princess the Montgomerys had tried to create. She started wearing jeans again instead of designer dresses. She laughed at silly jokes. She helped me cook dinner just like old times. One evening, about 3 months after the wedding, we were washing dishes together when she suddenly stopped and looked at me. "How did you know?" she asked. "About the fraud." I smiled and handed her a plate to dry. "I didn't know for certain. But I've spent enough years balancing books and tracking inventory to recognize when numbers don't add up. The Montgomerys had too much wealth for the income they reported. Robert drove expensive cars, but his business was supposedly struggling. They were too desperate to keep me away, too scared of my professional background." Paused, choosing my words carefully. And no family that legitimate needs to work so hard to exclude someone. Real wealth, real class. It's secure enough to welcome everyone. Only people hiding something need to keep others out. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding. You saved me, Mom. If you hadn't exposed them when you did, I would have been legally tied to that family when everything collapsed. I might have been charged as an accomplice. You're my daughter, I said simply. That's what mothers do. We protect our children, even when they don't want to be protected. Even when they pretend they don't know us. She set down the dish towel and hugged me tight, the way she used to when she was small. I'm so sorry, Mom. For everything. For being ashamed of you. For excluding Aunt Linda and Mrs. Chen. For calling Mrs. Montgomery mother. For pretending you were staff at my own wedding. I know, baby, I whispered. I know you are. How can you forgive me? She asked, pulling back to look at me with tearful eyes. After everything I did. I smiled and touched her cheek gently. Because that's what love is, honey. Real love. Not the conditional kind the Montgomerys offered, where you had to be someone different to earn it. Real love that stays even when you make mistakes. Even when you hurt the people who care about you most. Sarah started crying again, but this time they were healing tears. The kind that wash away shame and regret and start building something new. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. And later that night we sat on the couch looking through old photo albums. Pictures of birthday parties with dollar store decorations. School plays and soccer games. Family trips to the lake in our old car. I can't believe I was embarrassed by this, Sarah said softly, touching a photo of us at her high school graduation. This was real. This was love. And I traded it for fake people with fake money and fake values. You didn't know, I said. Now you do. That's what matters. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to. I love you, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I promised. Not ever. Thanks for listening, friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Granny's Voice. And feel free to share your own story in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard. Remember, real love doesn't come with conditions. And real family doesn't require you to be anyone but yourself. Until next time, this is Granny's Voice, reminding you that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone erase you, even when that someone is your own child.